Hey there, fellas. Okay, so right here I've got myself a guinea pig. And we just have to use it to conduct a few experiments now, don't we? It has already starred in a few of our videos, but it's not off the hook yet. So check this out. This has actually turned into something of a trend, with cars refusing to give up immediately, which is nice. Anyway, here's what I have in mind. I've seen a bunch of photos and gone through a ton of links, which viewers have been sending in as suggestions for us. I say we go ahead and make it a reality. Here's what we're going to be doing, guys. Today we're going to be fabbing a centrifugal clutch. We'll obviously be ghetto rigging this one. So here's what we're going to need for this job. We're obviously going to need this brake drum, a couple of pads. Everything else is fitted to the car at the moment. By which, of course, I mean the clutch disc, which we'll need for the spline hub. That's the thing you attach to the input shaft. The flywheel, which is still bolted to the motor, meaning we'll have to remove it. We'll be drilling a few holes and installing some studs, but that's something you can find in pretty much any sort of garage, so curious to see how it all works. I mean, centrifugal clutches are typically found in chainsaws, garden tillers, and a bunch of other stuff if you look into it, but for some reason, they don't use them in cars. Right, let's go ahead and throw one in and see how it works. Let's do this. DIY centrifugal clutch for a Lada. Translation and voiceover by BMI Russian. Alright, fellas. After a bit of trial and error, trying this and that, this is what we end up with. So the brake drum itself, we fitted it to the gearbox input shaft via the spline hub on the clutch friction disc, right? Here's how we made it all work. We had to go buy a wheel hub, which we welded the spline hub from the friction disc to. After that, we bolted all of that to the brake drum. We did a decent job of fitting it all together, but take a listen. You can hear the parts rubbing, ever so slightly. We've also got a wobble, and that worries me the most, to be honest. As I'm sure you can imagine, that wobble can turn out to be fatal, with the whole thing blowing up in our faces, while destroying the gearbox in the process. Yeah, it's just the gearbox which is at stake here. The motor should be okay. Then again, all the more interesting if something actually does go wrong. There are still a few things we gotta do. We will need to weld a few anchor pins to the flywheel in order to be able to install some pads. We're also gonna have to put in a few additional... This isn't gonna work without some adjustment studs, which will serve as sort of correction weights, so that the centrifugal force presses the pads down even harder. Otherwise, we'll need to bring the engine up to like 4.5 grand to set off from a standstill. But with this setup, we should start to see some movement at maybe about 1.5 to 2,000 revs. Anyway, what you see here is a rough draft, made for us to see how it's all coming together, so that we can figure out what we need to grind down, where we need a bit more clearance, and so on. So far, this is all looking... It looks fine. Now it's a matter of pulling it apart, welding on some anchor pins, installing a few nuts and springs, while showing you guys the entire process. After that, we throw it all into a car, bolt everything down, fire up the motor, and go have some fun. Let's do this. I'm not gonna argue. Okay, we've got the clutch in there, it's all dialed in. We aren't getting any knocking noises or anything like that. And now we get to firing it up for the first time. No idea what's gonna happen, or how many revs we're gonna have to feed to get it moving. It's all a big mystery. All we know is that the engine works. As for the clutch, well, it should work, but that's something we're about to find out. It seems to be working okay at idle, though I do hear something rattling in there. And I've stalled it. Okay then. It drives. Amazing. Here's the problem though. In my mind, I'm sitting inside a normal Lada, which should have 3 pedals. I have to get my left leg to... Yo dude, can you get me a screwdriver? To secure my shoe and keep my foot from twitching. There we are. We are good to go. There you have it, without using the clutch pedal. Everything works. When you let off the gas, the car stops. And when you get back on, it goes. See that? It just stopped in its tracks. Let's keep going. We are moving. Fantastic. Keep going, come on. If the tacho is anything to go by, the car starts moving when you get the revs up to 1,200, 1,300. It's just doing its thing. If we were to do some more fine-tuning, we could bring that threshold down even further. Then again, that would create some inconveniences during engine warm-up. Let's go. Ease off the gas, change gear, and keep on moving. Okay. Let off, change gears, and we're on our way. Here we are, scooting along. This is actually pretty nice. Now, if I were to let off... So what exactly are we dealing with? Okay, so I have to do it like this. It does take a bit of getting used to, this whole setup. I'm now in 3rd gear. The car is moving. Quite nicely, I might add. Oh, now I get it. So when you let off the throttle, the revs have to come down first, low enough for the pads to retract. That's why I couldn't get it out of gear. Let me just try something out. There we go. You can hear it when the pads start to slip. Looks like they're not gripping at low revs, but once you feed in a bit more throttle, it's all good. What if I go from second to third? Come on now. And we just keep going. Nice. We are moving. Awesome. Though I would prefer it to let me shift a bit earlier, but it refuses to do so. We'd need some beefier springs to make that happen, but if we install some beefier springs, it's not going to be able to set off at such low engine speed. I'd say it would grab somewhere around $2 grand, or maybe even higher. I say we keep going, to see how all of this holds up. But so far it's all good. I'm very pleased with what we've achieved here. Let's go already. Okay, so it looks like the pads have worn themselves out a bit. We are using an old set, which had a bit of rust on it. These pads used to grip very well, but after a little while, they're just not biting as hard. Shifting gears in this thing actually sucks, since you have to wait for the revs to drop. Okay, it went from third to fourth with zero hesitation. It actually drives quite nicely, just like any ordinary car, even in fourth gear. It's got some decent acceleration, no different from any other Lada. It's like you're driving with a normal clutch, actually. There's really nothing weird going on here. There is one more thing I'd like to try. I'll engage second gear and attempt to set off from a standstill. This usually works just fine with a normal clutch, but now we see how the centrifugal unit handles it. I have to say, it's pretty smooth setting off. No issues whatsoever. Okay, let go of second gear, please. Third gear, and we're off. I can occasionally feel a vibration, and I have no idea what's causing it. It starts as soon as I give it some gas. God knows where it's coming from. I've already tried setting off in first and second. Let's see how this thing likes setting off in third gear. I could have tried fourth, but I am worried about overheating the pads, or even outright burning the clutch. It's having trouble in third gear for sure. It's having a hard time. It is under a lot of stress though. But no worries. We are running a trick clutch in this thing. Let's do this. Putting my foot down to the floor. In third gear. Come on, little Lada. It's moving. And now we shift to fourth gear. Oh, you just had to pull out right now, didn't you? What is up with that guy? Okay, fourth gear. This is sweet. I like it when our experiments go like this. I've even gotten used to not having to press the clutch pedal, though it is a bit weird to have to shift the gears manually. Alright fellas, we've driven around on this centrifugal clutch, and I have to say it works quite nicely. Like I've already mentioned, they use this type of clutch in chainsaws, tillers, and a bunch of other equipment, but they don't find their way into cars. I mean, I guess that wouldn't be a particularly smart move. Anyway, when we were putting all of this together, with those pads which expand when you bring the revs up, and come in contact with the brake drum, which in this application serves as sort of a clutch drum as opposed to a brake drum. I'm not exactly sure what's the right way to call it. Anyway, those two pads we've got in there, they're sitting on basically just two pivot points. And if I'm being honest, I wasn't sure that those two anchor pins, which were approximately 10 millimeters thick, would even be able to handle that kind of load. But as a matter of fact, they were. The car happily gets up to speed, it slows down, and it can even set off in third gear. You just mash the throttle and off you go. No need for any sort of funky footwork, just press the gas and you're off, as if this thing had an automatic transmission, though you do still have to shift your own gears. All in all, I'd say that this worked beautifully. And that's all I have for you. Watch us, subscribe, send in those suggestions, give us a big thumbs up. All right, catch you later.